All right, so just real quickly, one of the things that I really loved about these shorts is that there's just this concept and idea and overall theme of transformation, and I feel like that in the family album, that's a part where I love how it's kind of centered in there because it kind of connects it all. When you talk about the butterfly tattoo and using the word transformation, and that was something that stuck to me as I watched these, how this is a point in everyone's life that is kind of like a shifting into something that's going to continue to be part of their lives. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to watch in these types of shorts, especially shorts of the elder queer community. So I just wanted to see if y'all wanted to kind of speak of that shift in the kind of work that you had showcased. Is that something you were trying to show, or is that something that was a little bit different?
I mean, transformation is interesting with the Pointless Fishes. They've been performing for 35 years, every year during it's part of a social satire in San Antonio that's been going on since the 50s. Mainly put on by the LGBT community. It's like kind of comments on what's happening in the world. It's like a platform and a voice for everybody. And for them, it's like they transform them. They've lost a lot of members over the years through the HIV and AIDS crisis, but I think they've stayed consistent. So it's hard to say if like, it's hard to really see that transformation per se. But they've adapted with the times, and they've evolved as a group. But I think at the core, they're still like same kind of make it happen kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Well, for me, the Isabel character is the person who transforms. She finally gets the life that she really should have had in the first place before, obviously, circumstances and society pulled her away from her true love. So, yeah. So for me, that was the biggest transformation of all, that she finally got to be who she was.
Yeah, I think in terms of transformation, for me, this was all inspired by witnessing somebody's transformation with how I got to move by subway, because a loved one who was closeted had received this ALS diagnosis and only had so much time left to be able to speak, and suddenly was forced in a very real way to confront the things they've left unsaid and what that looks like. But I also wanted to depict that transformation in a way for maybe people who knew of someone or had a loved one going through something similarly, to kind of showcase this way or depict this way that these small moments suddenly feel like this vast odyssey of like stepping into your identity. And so, yeah, I was inspired by what I witnessed.
Yeah, I think transformation in art film is kind of interesting too, because this is a long-term relationship that's been around for such a long time, and maybe that's playing out for them personally in ways that they didn't expect, but they're kind of staying the same. They've always lived this way for such a long time. But I think what's kind of an undercurrent is that the culture has changed around them too, and what they mean in that town and what they mean in this place today as like a queer couple would be so different 30 years ago, and what they're doing now is a part of that. And so I'm not sure that's like the front page of the film, but I think that's kind of underlying it, and was interesting to explore that.
Goodness, for me, it's kind of a threefold thing. There was obviously a transformation, being an African-American young woman growing up in a very secular surrounding. Not to speak of the fact of being a lesbian as well, and making that transformation from then to now. I'm 62 years old, so there's quite a bit of transition from then to present. And then, of course, in the motorcycle community, for those women that are in the motorcycle community, there was zero at the time when I started, not zero, but very, very small numbers. And then I had the opportunity to watch that grow over the years. I mean, it went from maybe one female in 300 men to probably 5 females in a group of 10 males now. So it's quite a change on so many different levels.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think the theme for all of these films is transformation, but I think it's also resurrection, which is certainly important for the younger generation character that's in our film. And I think that David can actually speak to transformation as well, if you want to talk about the butterfly story.
Which butterfly
When
story?
we had lunch the first time in the goo. Or you can talk
Oh, yeah, okay. We were talking about, I mean, it sort of runs through this piece is the whole thing of a butterfly, that when you're it starts out as a caterpillar, and then you have to go into the goo, into that chrysalis, and before you can become a butterfly, you have to go into that messy place that you don't. The caterpillar breaks down into goo, and then completely reforms into a butterfly, but in that goo you don't know what the fuck's going on. So
Right, no.
that's all I have to say about that.
I love that. That's great. And Dave, I did want to say, yeah, that I think one of the really beautiful things about the Pointless Sisters is this ongoing legacy at this point that was created within like the Latinx community. And I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood of like all like Latinx folks, so my neighbors actually danced, like they would teach kids and families like baile folklorico, which was really awesome. And then when I saw this, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's something, part of it that I've never seen before. And I wanted to know, like, how did your paths cross, and how did that come about for y'all to create this collaboration?
Well, so the main Red Keys actually does teach. He does teach at an elementary school about folklorico. Our cross-paths, I'd known about the group for about 15 years. We've been going to that show Coordination that they're a part of. So we've known them for decades. But we shot a short film about the event Coordination, and they just stuck out. You know, like his story was just so, to me, so raw and emotional that even though it's something we were filming a feature version of, a small piece in the feature, in which I just felt like it had to be a story that had to be excavated from that to, you know, to tell its own story. It was just so powerful, I felt.
Yeah, no, awesome. I mean, it's really beautiful just to see that. So, thank you. And then I did have another question for Gavin, because something that I thought every time I think about like queer women in like the bicycle community, I always think about like dykes on bikes, and I was very curious to know like if your relationship to them was.
You were asking, you know, because there's been a lot of, thank you. There's been a lot of people that have actually asked that, because the assumption is that every woman that's on a motorcycle is a lesbian, and that's not the case. You know, it's not the case. I mean, we're all across the board. You know, I mean, so it's kind of a tunnel vision view, or a rather naive view, if you will, because especially the Elitas is a global community. When you go global, I mean, you're talking about women of all ages, all shapes, sizes, colors, nationalities, religions, everything. So, you don't want to pigeonhole us into just this one little area. It would be very unfair to do that. I mean, we're the other half of the people.
Yeah. No, yeah, thank you. It was really awesome to see, and I feel like just even that opening made me feel like I was watching this like action movie that was like super badass, and we're gonna save the world or something. So it was so cool.
Yes, we did it.
So with that, I do want to see if there are any questions. Yeah, go.
Not a question as much as a comment. I've been coming to Outfest for many, many, many years. And I just wanted to say that this is probably the best collection of short films I've ever seen.
Thank you.
It's so touching, so warm, so eye-opening, informative, so beautifully done, all of them, that I just wanted to applaud all of you.
Yes.
I'm glad that we were able to show them.
I have a question.
Another question? Yes.
For the director of with the two British ladies,
Yes.
how did you cast them? Did they know each other? Have they known each other before?
Well,
Can everybody hear the question?
no.
No. Okay. So just real quick, he asked Rachel, how did the actors, how were they cast, and if they had known each other prior?
I didn't expect to be working with anyone famous, but I did. I did contact a local casting director who's a lesbian, and I thought she might find me a couple of jobbing actresses that would do the film for me. But she managed to get a script to the very famous one of those women, Dame Sean Phillips, who just loved it, really loved it, and she was so excited about it. And then we talked about who might be with her on screen, and she gave me 2 or 3 names, but she kept saying someone like Bridget Forsyth, so we basically went for her. She's a household name in the UK, she's not so well known internationally, But they have been friends for about 10 years. They worked together on a production called Calendar Girls, which did very well in the UK. And yeah, they're very good friends. They were just fantastic. Brilliant women to work with.
Yes.
I just want to tell everybody that Sean Phillips was in the original I, Claudius, and I hope it's still available online. It was a series on PBS, and she kicks ass.
Yeah, you can buy it still on DVD.
Another question? Yes.
Hi, I know sometimes short films are precursors to being made into features, and when I was watching Time and Again, Rachel, I wanted it to be, I wanted to see like a full-length play of it, I wanted to see a full-length feature of it, I mean, these mentions of like expanding it, and just more.
May everybody answer this question if there is something in plan for the new feature, but it's also a question I have in my head.
Yeah, I also have that same question. So.
Sorry for that.
So at the moment I have no plans to turn it into a feature, but I am writing something else for Sean and Bridget to be in. So
Yeah, the Pointless Sisters was, there's part of this coordination, there's 12 different groups that all put together their own skit from scratch, make their own costumes, and kind of it's a platform to talk about what's important. And the Pointless Sisters was one part of it, and so we did shoot a feature last year of the event, so we are in post-production on that.
There is a feature screenplay sort of based on what you saw. It's more so about my relationship when I was younger to my grandfather, and living in like suburban Florida, but tonally similar for sure.
Yeah, I planned, after making the short, I immediately wanted to kind of expand it into something, and I was sort of having problems, and so I went to talk to one of my great mentors who's here, Robert Hawk, sitting up there. He was also an executive producer on the film. Because I was inspired by Michael Haneke's Amor a little bit in that film, and I thought, oh, let's make this a longer version. And Bob said something really great to me. He said, you know, set it aside because you might not have everything you want to add to this film right now, but come back to it later. So, to be continued.
Wow. My hope is that it would eventually turn into either a feature film or a series of some sort that would highlight women's stories. I've been approached by two different executive producers, one being the producer, Step Studios, that did The Litas. They wanted to do something on my life more deeply and more personally, and I was like, of course you can. But that being said, it would be lovely to have something that would open it up to our situation more globally and express some of these other stories that are out there, because they're quite extraordinary, many of them, when it comes to women in motorcycling.
Yeah, the family album was actually a proof of concept for a feature that I've written called Monarch that we're currently raising money for. So if anybody has $1 million, I'd be happy to share it with you. But yeah, these are like a collection of scenes that kind of form the basis of the arc of this special friendship. And the character of Wolf kind of becomes the Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Yoda for Ashley, so that she can, transform and resurrect and get the fuck out of Arkansas.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm just excited for all of that. So, were there any other questions? Possibly.
I have one.
Yes.
How much was to your film? How much was Southern Comfort? Did it play a role at all in informing the Southern Comfort, the film? For those who don't know.
So the question was, how much was the film Southern Comfort a part of the family album?
Formative, yeah.
Formative, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Southern Comfort was a documentary, and I can't remember the filmmaker's name, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking, but it played at Sundance during the 90s, and it's one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. It's about a trans man who kind of identifies as just a trans cowboy who lives in a trailer in Georgia, and it basically documents the final year of his life. and it's incredibly powerful, and everyone should see it. And yes, I had seen the film when it originally came out, and it had always stayed with me. And it's just one of those stories that, you know, when you I don't know, when you can tell a story like that, I think that is when you've kind of achieved the goal, for me at least, of becoming a filmmaker. So certainly there's an underlying current of that story. So that's a very excellent perception.
So we have time for one more question. Yes.
Rachel, in your previous short film,
Yes.
the characters are so much younger.
Yes.
So what prompted you to go this
So this question was for Rachel about what prompted her to create a story of two older queer lesbian women.
Well, I'd been to BFI Flair Festival, and I'd seen two really great films with older lesbians in them. One was called Marguerite, that got nominated for the Oscar. And the other one was a lovely feature film called Snapshots, and I really enjoyed both of them, but I just felt like there was a story missing, that these were just women reminiscing about the past, and I wanted to do something where women were still alive and kicking now. So I just wanted a bit more of a celebration and a bit more sense that you still can have sex as an older person. And I wanted a happy ending. You notice that I played with the fact that she might have died. Because that's what we get, isn't it? We end up with people dying at the end, which is partly why I've been resistant to make it into a longer piece, because I really don't want to kill off one of those characters. If I were to turn it into a feature film, I'd have to be very clever about that, because I'm not killing either of them, because they're eternal as far as I'm concerned.
I love that. So another giant round of applause for these amazing filmmakers.